next up from the Sando QB ranks per NFL personnel. This one was interesting. Russell Wilson in at 4. Russ in at 4. And how about this quote, John, from a offensive coach about Russell Wilson? When we played him last year, I felt like a semi-drop-off in his game. I felt like he looked older, a little bit slower, and their offense did not help schematically. Watch him in their last game of the year. They had to win, and he was not good. He wasn't getting away from it fast, and he was missing throws. So a lot of criticism for the number 4 ranked quarterback on this list.
We did struggle at the end of the season. It did not. It looked like he was a lock to win the MVP halfway through. And then he kind of, really the last month, felt like he fell off a cliff, and he was not good in the playoff game. Now, they fired a bunch of people, right? They fired their offensive coordinator. They fired, I think, their offensive line coach. They made changes. So it's like they admitted it. It's why you can never judge anyone in the NFL off anything they say because it's useless, right? You just judge people off their actions. You can say, I love a coordinator. If you fire him, like, it tells you everything you need to know. You can say, hey, Trey Lance is a locked number 2 quarterback. And then all of a sudden he's running with the ones. Like, well, no, that's just, you can say whatever you want. And I think clearly they had issues, him and Schottenheimer at the end. Even though it was weird, like it always felt, even with Bevel, like things are going well. They're having success. But I think part of it, when you set the bar so high, their success is it's probably unfair. Because really, who are they comparing themselves to? Rodgers and Brady?
Well, yeah.
Which, is
that's who Russ is comparing himself to.
Yeah, so I think they add the new offensive coordinator. I understand the quote of, like, he looked old because he is viewed as a running quarterback, which is not really fair because he actually doesn't run that much, but he does run a lot behind the line of scrimmage. He feels like a very mobile quarterback. Maybe running's the wrong word because now running is like Lamar Jackson's a true running quarterback. Russell's probably the ideal mobile quarterback. He doesn't look fast, like when he moves. Do you agree with that? Like, even though he can gain yards, like have a 10-yard run and slide, he does not look like he's running like he's like a 4.8 guy. Now, part of it is he just kind of picks his spots. But I would agree, like his athleticism, and part of it might just be they built up so much strength that'll handle the rigors of getting hit. He is not a threat to just take off like he maybe once was, a 30, 40-yard run. He can still gain yards and run out of bounds. But I would say his arm looks as good as it's ever looked, right? Maybe their offense wasn't clicking, which is not all his fault, and some of it is. Like anytime you're a quote-unquote mobile quarterback, I think offensive line will tell you it's not easy to block for him. Like I know where Tom or some of these guys are going to be. I think Mahomes sometimes, like Patrick, you can't just do a 360 and head left when your offensive lineman thinks you're rolling right. And that's part of being like an artist, right? Which Russ is, for me, in my life of really watching football hard the last 2 decades, I think he's one of the most artistic athletes I've ever seen.
Yeah.
He's one of my favorite athletes ever to watch.
But if you're playing, but the challenge, right, is he's been sacked 51, 48, 47 times. He's playing jazz music. It's beautiful, but
it hasn't translated to the games that matter for them.
Well, right? It's a dangerous way to play if not everyone else, if no one else knows what music you're about to play, right? That's a tough thing. And
the wide receivers do. They go deep. And
they just run, and he throws it to them. And we're talking about a guy who threw 40 touchdowns, 13 picks last year, was on pace early. Like, that's part of it. It was a tale of 2 seasons with them. But, I mean, they've been 10 wins, 11 wins, 12 wins the last 3 years. To me, they have not felt like a Super Bowl contender in any of those years. Last year, I did not, by the time we got near the playoffs, they did not feel like a championship contender, and they weren't.
I agree. Yeah. They didn't feel like we talked about this earlier this week. They felt more like a 10-6 team than a 12-4 team.
But here's the thing. If you're the Niners, your concern when the season starts is not, can the Seahawks win the Super Bowl? You just got to beat them. How do we beat them?
Yeah.
That's what it is. You know what I mean? Like, okay, Russ, he can't win 14 games. Yeah, I'm going to play him twice. And how do I beat him? Because he's terrifying. Because his bad year, he won 12 games, John. So
he's played some of his best games by far against the Niners. He's like what Max Muncy does to the Giants. That's what Russell's been doing for like a decade, right? I would say in his career against the Niners, he might have had one bad game. And that was a couple years ago, the year they got Bosa. Remember, I wanted him to tank, and they won that meaningless game. But for the most part, he is fucking lights out, and he's comfortable against them. He is very, very comfortable against them, right? The opposite of what Jared Goff was against the Niners.
Yeah.
He feels confident, right?
Yep.
And it has to be just you play a team this many times, and I mean they've had the same. It could be something, especially with the last 4 years. He sees the defense that he sees in practice, right, his entire career. Like the Seattle defense is the defense that he's grown up playing against. Now, things change and quirks, and different players do different things, even in the same scheme. But still, man, I don't. To me, when he plays bad, I don't. He's fallen off, or sometimes you just play shitty. It is a very. I think sometimes we nitpick that position a little much. Like, you can be a great pitcher and give up 3 home runs in a game, right? You can be Peyton Manning or Tom Brady and have a game where you throw a couple picks. You can play poorly. And I think you're more likely to play really poorly when you do things outside the offense, right? Like Tom's, unless he throws like 2 pick sixes, he's not going to do things to like take crazy ass sacks. There's elements of what Russ can just bring from a negative standpoint that is just different than a lot of the true great pocket quarterbacks. Even though I view Russell as a throwing quarterback, not like when his story's written, it'll not be anything with his like he kept plays alive with his legs, but he was like this. Would you say like the Steve Young kind of this generation? He kicks your ass with his arm.
Yeah, but his legs serve his arm.
The question is that it hasn't translated since he's turned into this badass thrower, right? The second half of his career, to a lot of playoff wins. Like they used to be pretty consistently like they're probably going to be an NFC Championship team or compete those years with the defense. They've really, I mean, last year they hosted a playoff game and lost.
It has coincided with their defense being less badass.
Well, that's part of paying a quarterback $35-40 million. They've missed on and part of this is
they
winning.
Don't draft high.
They pick at 25. It's just hard to get.
And then they
players.
pick at 38.
Yeah. That's why they probably said, "Fuck it, and we'll just trade a couple firsts for Jamal, right? Yeah. Get us something we know works."
This part of the NFC West, again, I think from a schedule standpoint, there are reasons that the Niners have an opportunity to get off to a fast start. Why they would really, obviously, everyone would benefit from a fast start, but you've got now 3 of the 4 teams in the division basically running the same offense. For 2 of them, they've got a quarterback who hasn't been in that offense before running it, right? So the Rams, the Niners, the Seahawks running the same thing. But the Seahawks quarterback has not run it before, and the Rams quarterback has not run it before. So, you could go to reason that they'll be better offensively as the year goes on than they will be week 1. Obviously, the Cardinals run an offense returning quarterback. But, I don't know, it'll be interesting to see if we look back on the early part of the season and say, the Rams didn't quite have it yet. The Seahawks didn't quite have it yet. But Russ, Stafford, as the season went on, they got better. And there was a window early in the year maybe to not build a lead, but just take advantage of that.
Are all these teams going to look the same? They're going to
Do the Packers look like the Niners?
I would say at times. Aaron looks way sweeter than Jimmy.
Yeah.
But, they run the same, like the boot. Jared Goff has been running the same shit Kyle's been running forever. It just doesn't always work. Right. Same with Kyle when he gets Nick Mullins or whatever. Like, the core plays are the core plays.
Yep.
The stretch running plays to the stretch, fake the running play, boot back. Like, there are just some built-in easy-ass plays, right, that are just, I would say, the core pieces of the playbook that they're all going to run. You're right. And then you throw in wrinkles, what part of it, any good coach worth their fucking salt, if you have a Tutu Atwell, you're going to run plays for him that you would run different for Deebo Samuel. Like, those teams don't all – I guess the Rams, they run some, like, fly sweep they hand to Deebo. They do it. I've seen them do it with Robert Woods. But, Robert and Deebo are little different players, but they both incorporate that because then that also goes to, like, the fake jet sweep to the play action to the bomb. Just they all kind of build off each other.
Yeah.
But, like, only one team has use check while the Rams have a couple more, like, mobile tight ends while Seattle, I don't even know. They got random tight ends that they kind of shuffle through. They have DK where the Niners and the Rams have more just like just two normal wide receivers, right? So there are elements of your offense that just like Devontae is way different than DK Metcalf, so you're going to run different routes for him.
Yeah.
Even though the play, design might look the same, you just might ask one guy to run an out route, the other guy runs a post route, which you should, right? You shouldn't ask DK to I'm sending DK deep where I'm saying Devontae run a slant, break a tackle, get me 20, right?
Yeah. And you still have to have a good play caller organizing the whole thing, right? But I think Kyle in this way is kind of Billy Bean in a way, where all of a sudden 20 years later, at first it's like, oh yeah, the A's and Rays like the same players. And then it's, well, the A's and the Rays and the Red Sox like the same players.
Wouldn't you call Mike Billy Bean?
Yeah, or Mike's Billy Bean.
Friedman and Farhan.
Yeah, whoever. You want to make it Mike, you want to make it Kyle. The point is just, it's one thing when a couple teams trying to find an advantage, but now it's the Dodgers and the Rays like the same players?
But didn't this happen to Seattle's defense with all these guys
For sure.
went all around?
Yeah.
Right?
But but I do think that defense
Billy McKinney's been on 7 teams. They're all
guys. Billy McKinney. I was thinking of him, right? Because again, all the same guys like him.
Did you know Stephen Vogt was on the Atlanta Braves?
The Braves, yeah, I did know that.
When did that happen?
A couple days ago.
I like that move.
I do too. I'm excited for him. But yeah, man, but at the end of the day, the Seahawks defense was also built on superstar defensive players, right? This offense, the beauty of it is, I think offensively, you have the football. You get to control a little more than any defensive coordinator gets to control.
But I agree. But at the end of the day, like I saw on Jonathan Abram must have talked after practice today, and they're like, "What's it like playing box safety?" Well, what's box safety in the defense? Ultimately, it all goes back to everyone's looking for Cam Chancellor.
Yeah.
And Abram actually has some similarities, but it's hard to find Cam Chancellor. Like, we all want tall, long corners. Well, how many Richard Shermans in their prime have there ever been in the league? So, yeah, we're all looking, and even Pete is a good example of, and I've heard him talk about this, I think leading up to the draft, like a draft press conference, ultimately we've had to be open-minded about if a corner's really good and he's 5'10", I can't just be dead set on he has to be 6'1". Because I remember when Chip was hired in my little 5-month stint working the personnel department, when he instituted the guys he was looking for, only wanted Buckner and Armstead. And I remember the college scouting director was like, honestly, Chip, there are only 3 guys in this draft that fit that. And it was before those guys even came out. But they were freshmen and sophomore. Their entire defensive line were guys 6'6" and above.
Right.
It's honestly, most of the good defensive linemen are in this draft are between 6'2" and 6'4". So you can pigeonhole yourself, but it's if the guy gets picked by another team, you don't even have anyone to pick. So this is back to what we talked about with the offense all looking the same. Naturally, you would just adapt a little bit, right? You grow up, you love John Miller, you want to call games like John Miller or Bob Costas or fucking whoever. Well, eventually you just kind of turn into you copy some tenets of them, but you also add who you really are. Like Sean McVay probably idolized some of the things Shanahan did, but also probably thought I'd like to do this as well. Or LaFleur or all these guys, and you kind of become your own man. Dan Quinn, Gus Bradley, those guys are everywhere.
Oh, look at this on the YouTube chat from Mr. Superfly. It says Sherman and Cam are also 5th rounders. You can't predict 5th rounders turning into superstars either, right?
It was a huge element. It's hard to say luck because they ultimately picked the guy, but you're right. Also, I remember when they got Cliff Averill on a 1-year deal. They got Michael Bennett, who anyone could have had. The way their defense came together, if you remember, Earl Thomas was really the only top 15 pick. The rest of them were kind of built on, even Bobby Wagner, he was a 2nd-round pick. I remember I picked him up at the airport. I remember telling Howie, he's like, he's got this Ninja Turtle backpack. It's kind of weird. I don't know. Then it's God, we regret not taking him.
Bruce Irvin was a 1st-rounder, but he was,
I would say, what would you say, on the hierarchy of their starting 11?
All the guys
at one
we
point in
named.
time, it felt like he was 7 or 8.
Yep.
Yep. And honestly, when they were really humming, he might have been 9 or 10. It just shows you how good they were. Would you put him ahead against Cam, Earl, Richard, Averill, Michael Bennett, Bobby Wagner, KJ Wright? He honestly,
KJ Wright's sneaky older than I realized.
But think how long he's been good.
He was in the 11 draft.
Is he employed right now?
It's a good question.
I don't think he signed with anybody.
Let me click on his name here and tell you. Does not appear that he's on a team right now.
The good thing for him is playing for Seattle for a decade. He knows 7 defensive coordinators currently right now. So he's one injury away from probably getting $5 million.
That's where, that's where just being a backup for one of these guys is going to just be incredible over the course of a few years, right?
Well, there's no better feeling than being on a powerhouse team and being like a Malcolm Smith, being the 4th linebacker. One of your guys gets a defensive coordinator, and you look at your agent, you're like, cha-ching, baby. You want 20 guaranteed, or we're going to shoot for 24, right? You've started like 2 games in your career, and all of a sudden it's like, break the bank. But you have to do it. That's where in football there's an element of luck. Like, you get drafted by a sweet team or you get drafted by a shitty team where you got to start right away, and then maybe you're out of the league in 5 years. Instead, you have a 10-year career when really you were never a starter.
Well, like, John, if Carson Wentz, for some reason, like Carson had his mask on the other day at his press conference, if Carson tests positive for COVID, has to miss week 1, whose phone is ringing immediately?
Philip?
Oh, yeah, Philip, that's one. I was going to say Ryan Pace's phone is ringing because we already know that Frank Reich tried to sign the Bears' 3rd-string quarterback a couple of years ago, Nick Foles, who's making a ton of money. Like, you could acquire. Yeah, you could. Nick will be like, we'll just restructure. You guys will move some money back. You guys add another year. It's like, wait, what? Foles just got $8 million to get traded to the Colts?
Nick, and all for it, but he's made a lot of money after that Super Bowl.
No doubt, man.